3. Hello and welcome to another edition of C Squared Podcast. This is your host Curtis with my co-host Aaliyah, and once again we are solo. We don't have a guest today. We weren't going to actually do this podcast because I'm feeling like crud again, but we decided to do it anyways because I'm feeling a teeny bit better. So we have an important topic today, as always. This is going to be about the 5 biggest wastes of time and money that a band can make, in our opinion. So we're going to start it off with Aaliyah kind of going over what we're going to cover here, I guess, in general, and then we'll start getting specific.
Yeah, so don't worry, guys. We will get back into interviewing people very soon here. It's just we've got these episodes about topics that we wanted to insert here because they're important topics for us to talk about.
And Curtis is a wimp.
And Curtis is, you know, sometimes struggling with fatigue and
yes.
So I put this list together real quick with the help of Curtis, and please feel free to argue with us about what the biggest wastes of time and money are in your opinion. But we're going to start off with one that I think is big, and that is, ironically, releasing your album too quickly is a waste of your time, because hear me out. It's so important to have a proper release cycle. And if you release your album too quickly, people won't hear it. Curtis, you want to go into why that might be?
Yes. And would you like to, I don't think I told you this, but we actually just had this happen to us where a band was supposed to work with us and then they had some setbacks. And as a result, they decided to, instead of releasing their album 3 months from now or 4 months from now, they decided that they were going to release the album right away. We're not working with them, obviously.
No.
So this actually just happened about a week and a half ago. So there was they've been kind of teasing that they were doing a new album for like the last, I don't know, couple of years or whatever, but they kept having all these setbacks. I don't want to go into why they decided to drop it. There was some issues that were somewhat valid in their mind, at least, for releasing right away versus hiring a PR company. But here's the deal. Unless your name is Metallica, this isn't going to go over very well for you. And even then, it's probably still not going to go over very well for you. I think it was Avenged Sevenfold, if I'm not mistaken, who did a surprise drop back in 2016 or 2017, and they had the worst performing their worst performing charting that they'd ever had. I think it was Avenged Sevenfold. Don't quote me on that. It was some big band like that. Where am I going with this?
That is surprising. And that just shows you, that it can affect even huge bands like Avenged Sevenfold or whoever it was. It was a big band, and it happened. It affected their charting numbers dramatically. So, but you may not be people who listen to our podcast may not be people who are going to chart at all, but it'll still affect you.
Well, here's the thing that you got to be aware of. So, are you okay if I go into this a little bit more detail there? Okay, good. Just making sure. So, okay, so there's a couple factors here. So if you don't do a proper campaign, you don't do a proper lead up and all the rest of that, number one, no one's going to review your album, because the problem is reviewers will not touch it if it's already out. And you need to have the album in reviewers' hands a good couple months beforehand, so you even got a chance at getting reviewed. So you won't get print reviews, so you're automatically out with Decibel, Powerplay, Metal Hammer, all the rest of them, if you don't get them the album a couple months in advance at least. So there's some coverage automatically taken away. In addition to that, you also will not have the opportunity to stream tracks anywhere. There's my cat in the background if anybody wants to see him. You won't have an opportunity to stream any tracks, because again, sites will want a new song. Your promotion is fucked, is basically the main thing.
Yeah, and that's important because you want every outlet that you can have talking about your music, because you never know where someone is going to discover your band.
Ooh, and here's another part of this here too. I don't know if you intended for this to be part of the conversation, but I'm going to add it anyways, as for releasing before it's ready. I've had it where bands, well, I've seen it, not I've personally had it. I've seen it where bands will release tracks that are not well mastered or mixed to rush it out there as well. We actually had this happen last year. There was a band that wanted to hire us, and they sent us the tracks and everything, but the problem was that the mix just, it wasn't very good. Like, the band was good, but the mixes were off. They sounded muddy. They didn't sound very good at all. And we said that to them. And 9 times out of 10, if you tell a band that their tracks aren't ready, they're going to say, fuck you, we're putting it out anyways, stupidly. These guys actually listened to us, though, believe it or not. Yeah, they went back and they actually improved the mixes. So that's another thing to keep in mind too. And what they said to us at the time, the reason why they were just going to do it is because they were having a problem getting the guy to do it. He was taking too long. They were running out of patience, blah, blah, blah. But when we finally explained to them, we just said, well, look, if you half-ass this and you just release it before it's ready, it's not going to do well. You're just going to look not very good, right? So that was another part that I wanted to bring up that falls into that category.
And it's interesting how that segues into point number two that I was going to bring up, because yeah, obviously you don't want to go with, as far as getting the production for your music goes, you don't want to necessarily choose somebody that's just a local guy who doesn't understand your genre, doesn't understand metal. You don't want to do that. But you also don't need to go to the opposite extreme necessarily of getting what I would call celebrity production and going to the same studios that, you know, the label bands, Flesh God Apocalypse, are going to, because they have label budgets, you know, and you're going to pay a lot of money for that kind of production. And you might be able to find somebody who's going to do just as good a job or close to as good a job that's not a celebrity. And it's going to be, you know, it's probably a better use of your money and time to do that, in my opinion.
We actually had this happen to us fairly recently as well. Well, I know of an instance where this happened. The person decided to not pay for PR for, I think it was 4 months or something like that, and instead decided to invest. It was like an insane amount of money into a fairly well-known guy who would be producing it and would be mixing and mastering, if I'm not mistaken. It was a lot of money. And I'm sure the guy did a fantastic job on the on her stuff. But the thing is spending all that money and then having no PR and having no advertising to back it up, nothing's gonna fucking happen, period. So
right, because you know, if you're an unknown artist or an indie artist or a lesser known artist, you really need that promotion.
Yep. Well, here's the thing that this person thought. They thought that if they had this name behind them, that would be all they really needed in order to get people to pay attention. But the problem is if you got the name, but no one knows the name is there, nothing's going to happen. But now I have a good example of this though, and it's not with production or anything like that. It's with guest spots. So we have a client named Joseph Isaiah, and he last year he went and got a bunch of high-profile guest musicians on his album. He had like Doc Coyle, one of the guys from As I Lay Dying, a few other big names. I can't even remember off the top of my head, but I think it was like 5 or 6 like really big names that he had. I don't know how much he paid or if he paid anything for it. I think he told me. I don't remember. But the point is, Joseph got the big names, but then he got PR to back it up in order to help him do that. He knew that if he didn't have the PR and if he also ran ads on YouTube. He knew that it wouldn't work if he didn't have all of that there. And as a result, we got him a pretty good campaign from doing that. So there's my 2 cents.
That's a good point. And that's a little bit different as well, because if you think about like the people that mix and master albums, the average fan of bands doesn't know the names of people who mix and master you know, albums. But if they know that their favorite singer is singing on your track, they're gonna check it out because they want to hear their favorite singer. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic.
100%.
Might be a better use of your time if you want to have some sort of celebrity involved, maybe a guest vocalist or guest musician of some sort. And we have episodes talking about how to do that correctly. So feel free to go back and listen to those. Maybe we'll talk about it in the future as well.
We could. Oh, one last thing I want to bring up on that, just a point that you made, Aaliyah, which is that if you don't think that Aaliyah's right, that most music fans do not know who the big mixing mastering guys are, or the producers are, ask Joe Average, and they will not be able to tell you who half these people are. Like, the only people that know who Sanford Parker is, for example, who's very well known in the metal world. I don't know why I mentioned Sanford Parker. He just all of a sudden popped up. Are other people that work in the music industry. Joe Average fan is not
other
going to know.
Musicians might know,
and journalists.
Average fans,
yeah,
not so much.
And sorry, Sanford, if you're listening to this, you are fantastic at what you do. I was not intending that as an insult. Anyways, back to you.
Well, let's go ahead and move on to another waste of time, potentially a waste of money, paying for ads. And this can be helpful in certain scenarios.
It can.
But I'm thinking like an average Joe indie band, not average Joe, but an indie band paying for print ads in Decibel magazine, for example. And it's a hefty investment, and you don't know, you have to really be careful, right? Like, so you need to know that the people who read the magazine are in your niche, and it's just it's a pricey investment. You know, labels do it, but individual bands usually don't. So I would be curious to hear your thoughts on that, Curtis.
It depends. We, on a former podcast that I used to be on, there was a guest. We had a guest on, Scotty from Tank Crimes, and he advertised, I think he still does, don't quote me on this because I haven't actually looked at a print copy of Decibel in a while, but he was talking about how he does like to invest in ads in Decibel, but he made a very good point, and this is one that all advertising people will tell you. You have to do it more than once, and you have to do it for a long period of time for it to be worth it. So,
well, and also he has a label, right?
He does have a label, but
it's a label, not just one artist.
That's true. But I agree with what he said. Like, the thing with advertising is that it is true that you have to do a whole bunch of it in order for it to bite. If you got the funds to put out, for example, like a few $1,000s at Decibel, just know that you're not necessarily going to recoup that. Like, you might not, but that's all you got to know. So, is it worth it in some cases? Yes. Is it not worth it in some cases? Yes. Does everything that you spend that kind of money on come with a hefty price that could possibly not be returned to you? Yes.
And could it possibly be spent better elsewhere?
Yes.
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 Yes. So, I mean, obviously, like, social media advertising is something that can be helpful, but it also, you have to be careful. It takes a lot of work to target those things correctly.
Yes.
So if you're not targeting things correctly and not setting it up right, you might just be getting advertised to bots.
Yeah.
And so,
there's a well-known social media guy in the metal world that targets Mexico, for example, and small third world countries, and they get a lot of clicks and stuff like that. But if you look at the comments and stuff on the ads that they run, 99.9% of the people are in Mexico and India, and nothing against those two countries, but I can guarantee you those are basically click farms that he's targeting and getting the responses from. Just
so that he can get the cheapest clicks, probably.
Yeah, and it looks good. But here's something just to keep in mind with advertising too. Facebook in many instances is going to be a waste of time nowadays. But at the same time, you have to kind of figure out, like what Aaliyah was saying, what you're going for. Like, if you're doing YouTube ads, for example, you're probably going to want to be going for views. So if you're going for views, and you're investing, I don't know, $300, $400 or whatever, and you want to get like 100,000 views or 50,000 views, whatever the heck it is, that's a good investment of your money, and it could get people to buy stuff later, right? So you just kind of got to be aware of why you're spending the money and what it's for, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, really good points. I would love to do a whole episode on advertising at some point if we can get an expert on here.
We have Corey Westbrook, who works with us, that we could probably get on, who's been doing advertising for a good 15 years, 16 years, something like that.
Yeah, she might be a good one to have.
Yeah, we kind of know her a little bit.
Yeah. So maybe for future.
Yeah.
Now moving on to number 4.
Yeah.
And I have this titled as Just Breakup Already. And by this, I mean a huge waste of time is staying in a band that is not doing anything and is not going to do anything. just
Was there a band that
because.
brought this up, Aaliyah? Are you willing to say what band it was?
No, I don't think I should name drop. I don't
God
think I should
damn it.
name drop. We don't do
I,
that here.
I name
Um,
drop sometimes. Sometimes.
but um, here's the thing. I understand that you've built a fan. Sometimes you've built a fan base with that band, and it's hard to relocate those people. Um, but what it does if you're trying to hold on to something that's falling apart or just isn't benefiting you, it is a huge waste of your energy, and it's a distraction from the things that you could be doing.
Yep. There's a lot of bands like this. One that just popped in my head, and I hope I'm not mistaken in thinking that they're still doing this, but to my understanding, a good example of this is Skeleton Witch, who I'm just double checking. I'm not talking out of my ass, but the last time I checked, they hadn't released anything since 2017, I think it was. But they were still listed as active on Metal Archives, if I'm not mistaken. Hopefully, I'm not talking out of my ass on that, but like, and I don't know what's going on with that. Someone might just email us now and be telling us, no, they're really doing stuff. Okay, cool, whatever. I didn't realize that, but I remember back in 2010, 2009, 2011, they were all over the place. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing anything about Skeleton Witch. But then their vocalist got kicked out or quit or whatever back in, I think it was 2016. And I know they got a new vocalist, but you don't really hear much about them anymore. And they are listed as active. So unless there's something I don't know, I don't know. They just popped in my head. I did name drop. I'm sorry, Leah.
That's okay. I feel like I think that the last time I checked, my college band is still listed as active on
What is the name of your
Metal Archives.
What band?
So I don't know how to get them to not. I probably have to like report an error or something to get them to.
What band?
I don't want to mention it on the podcast. So I mean, Metal Archives isn't always up to date on, especially on like indie bands. I would assume they'd be up to date on Skeleton Witch though.
Whoa! I want to bring something up though. There are instances of bands being inactive for years though that suddenly magically come to life. So I just want to point that out too though.
Right. Well, and like I don't think this is obvious. I don't think that this is like a remedy for all.
True.
All situations. Like if you've got a project that you're just writing for years and you're not really doing anything and with it other than just writing, that's fine. But I'm thinking more like you're not writing for it, you're not practicing, you're not planning anything for the future, you're not trying to do anything for the future. It's just kind of
dead.
Yeah, and maybe you can't come to any conclusions amongst band members. You can't unite in a common goal and that sort of situation. And in that case, it's perhaps cautiously, I say, better to move on from that situation. And sometimes it can be psychologically beneficial to officially end things instead of just having it kind of lingering as a potential.
I agree.
Sure.
One thing I also want to comment on is that one thing I don't like is where sometimes where the band will split up and one band member will keep the name, but everybody else leaves. Just as an aside.
I feel like that kind of depends on if it's like the main songwriter, it can work.
True. Megadeth.
Yeah.
True.
Megadeth.
True.
Because it may not change their sound that much
to
change a bunch of members if there's already only one person doing the majority of the songwriting.
I got handled as soon as I thought of Megadeth. I'm fine on it now. I see it.
But I mean, and the other thing to consider about that is bands evolve over time, right? True. So whether it's with the old members or new members, sometimes sound can change. And I don't think some people might argue it, but I don't think it's a correct argument to say that Nightwish should change their band name because they're no longer playing the type of music that they did when they wrote once.
This is true. Okay, I'm handled on this. I'm handled.
But it's a good thing to think about anyway.
I agree.
So moving on to number 5, our surprise
Oh, it's a surprise. Do you want me to go over this surprise?
Yeah, go over it.
So this was something we discussed really quickly before the show. So the ultimate biggest waste of money, well, maybe not the ultimate, but what can be the ultimate and biggest waste of money for people, or for bands rather, is hiring PR, believe it or not. Now there's two ways that this could be a waste of money. Let me see if Aaliyah knows what I'm going to say. This is a pop quiz. Let's see. I got two reasons why this could be the biggest waste of time and money.
Well, one of them is you're sacrificing your release on the altar of the wrong PR.
Yes.
And you won't get the coverage, and you might earn yourself a bad reputation if you go with, for example, the dollar store PR.
Yep. You got half of it. Good. Okay, good. So
okay, what's the other half?
Aaliyah's got half of it. So I'm going to start with the thing that nobody thinks about. Well, most people don't think about paying too much for PR. So sometimes people will hire like a major publicist, like I don't want to say, because people will think I'm speaking evilly of these people when I'm not. But there's no reason that a band that's brand new on their debut needs to hire the same publicist as a band that's been around for 20, 30 years that has sold platinum or gold and paying the same amount of money. There's no reason whatsoever. Because that publicist might have a few more contacts than lower price publicists, but on average, like here's a good example. So, and I'm trying my best not to name drop Aaliyah. I'm really trying my best because I know some of these people and I like these people and I know they're not, there's no, like they do a great job.
Here's the other thing. These people are charging for their time.
Exactly.
And their time is worth what they can get for it.
Exactly.
Right? So there's nothing wrong with them charging a lot of money.
Not at all. And I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. They deserve to be paid what they get paid. But there is, for example, I know as a fact, we had a client that worked with someone who reps an extremely major band, who's been on stuff like ABC, NBC, CBS, all the major TV channels, ESPN, got this band on all these places. And they charge a lot of money because they've been able to do that, and rightly so. They've also gotten their bands in Rolling Stone, they've gotten them in Spin, they've gotten them in Pitchfork, you name it, they've gotten coverage there, major coverage. But the thing is, they got major bands that coverage. They didn't get Joe indie band. So, for example, this person, I'm not going to say who it is. I'll tell Leah after if she wants. For example, paid the top dollar rate for this PR, deservedly so, on their debut. And they were less than pleased because they did not get like the CNN, they didn't get the Tonight Show or whatever the fuck it was. I don't even know what it's called anymore. I don't even know what it's fucking called anymore. They didn't get any of the major.
Know. Why would I know?
I don't know. They didn't get any of the talk shows or anything like that. Now, this publicist did not promise them any of that type of stuff, but they assumed, because this publicist worked with these major bands and gotten these major bands these things, they would get that type of stuff. So they were incredibly disappointed when they didn't. And this isn't the first time I've heard this story. Now, again, this is not the fault of the publicists in question. I cannot imagine these people ever guaranteeing or even hinting that they would get these people this type of coverage. But yeah, I mean, basically they were charging probably about 5 times what we would charge them. They came to us, they paid the amount that they should have for their level, and they got the results that they wanted, and they got the results at a fairer, well, not fairer price, but at a price that was more suited to their budget and their needs at this time. Did I say that diplomatically? I'm really trying to. Okay, good.
Right. And here's a little metric you can use, think about bands that are on a similar level to you.
Yeah.
And go with the PR that has bands of a similar level to you, similar level of popularity, I mean. Not similar level of quality necessarily, but similar level of popularity or knownness or Iron Maiden number, as we mentioned.
Yeah. But reversely, and I know sometimes people will still want to do that because there is always the chance that sometimes that publicist can land them in the big spots. Like one of the PRs I'm thinking of took on a fairly unknown band, and they got them like everywhere, but this band had a really unique story, so it made sense why they got them there. So if you're gonna like paying too much for PR is generally a bad idea. So, don't go and hire the publicist for Metallica. I have no idea who that is because it's just going to cost you lots of money and it's probably not going to be worth it for you at this point in time. But did you want to say anything on that before I go to the second half of the coin there? No? Okay. But on the other side of the coin is you can be paying too little for PR.
Well, that's the one that I said first.
I know, but I want to go into it. That's
all right, go in.
The too much was the shocker that nobody ever thinks about. I was trying to be sneaky there. So too little. So too little is generally, how do I want to put this? We call it dollar store PR, but here's what happens. So it's not really PR. So 99.9% of the time, if you hire someone for $50 or $100 or something to do your PR, all you're getting is an email blast, maybe once or twice. There is a known person that advertises that they do total devastation by emailing the crap out of people. I think they said it was like 13 or 14 blasts. And it's like, really? So this person doesn't write a bio. They don't even tag the MP3s. They don't make sure everything looks good. They just send a blast over and over and over and over.
Just think how you feel when you get a bunch of email in your inbox that you didn't ask for.
Yeah, well, it's
about the same thing.
Yeah, but PRs are always going to send a lot of email. Like we send a lot of emails, but the difference is that we have a presentation to go along with it. We don't have, it's not just like, one line saying, hi, this is a thrash band from Croatia, please review, and then have a bunch of untagged MP3s that you don't know what they are. And anyways, when you're getting an email blast done that is not PR, can that work sometimes, get you some reviews in some small sites? Sure, it can. Is it worth the $50 in those cases? Sure, sometimes. But here's the thing you got to look at. Many journalists hate these dollar store PRs with a passion because they spam them. Most of them do not have a good rep. I cannot think of a single one that has a good rep. If someone can email us and tell me of a single dollar store PR, a legitimate dollar store PR that has a good rep, I will eat my words. But 99.9% of them do not have a good rep. Most of them will get deleted sight unseen. And if your band name is associated with that dollar store PR, it's going to be hard later when you get a decent PR for anybody to take you seriously. It's like, if Shield of Wings went with, decided to do a mass spamming campaign prior to working with us, it would have we would have had to do some damage control prior to that even starting, to be honest. So anyways,
good thing we didn't.
No, you didn't. But that's the thing, is you got to look at the whole picture. It's like, if you are associated with a dollar store PR, it doesn't look good for you for the future either. I actually saw a review, another PR sent me, that there was a review in, I think it was Power Play magazine, don't quote me, but it was a print magazine, where the whole review was about how unprofessional the PR kit this person got, and it was from a dollar store PR. So they spent the whole review talking about that. Yeah. Anyways, that's all I got on that, unless you got further questions for me on that point.
I feel like I had one and then I lost it.
I'm sorry, I babbled.
No need to apologize. I
have something else though, if you
go ahead, maybe I'll think of my question.
Okay, cool. So one last point I want to make. So if you're looking for PR, obviously I want to toot our own horn and say that, go with us. Here's a couple things you want to be aware of, and I've said it before. Oh,
I wanted to ask you, what makes real PR different from dollar store PR? You mentioned they are just an email blast, and you mentioned that a real PR will write bios and things like that, but what else do real PRs do differently from dollar store bios?
They do a lot of heavy contact, and they keep in touch with people. So, and they know who people are as a general rule. So for example, they actually keep in touch with people. Here's a good example. They can email a writer and they will get a response most of the time. It doesn't happen all the time, but they're more likely to get a response than the blaster person. For example, I don't want to name drop. I'm doing my best not to name drop. I'm sorry. Does a dollar store PR store person even know who the editor-in-chief of Metal Hammer is? Probably not.
That's rough. Yeah.
I'm just saying, do they know who the writers are at Decibel, other than maybe just Albert runs the place? Probably not. Do they have their email? Probably not. If they do have their email, did they get it from a legitimate source? Probably not. Do they answer the email? Probably not. Do they ever socialize with them on social media? Probably not. There's a lot of contact and then trying to figure out, not necessarily schmoozing, but it is kind of schmoozing that you got to do.
It's building relationships.
Yeah. 100%.
Real relationships with the community that you're really genuinely a part of.
100%. And we do that without even intending to schmooze half the time. Like, a good example with us is we frequently have writers on here, a lot. We've even got Kevin and Ian as co-hosts sometimes, right? And that's not a schmoozing thing. I'm just saying, like, that's just an example of, like, we'll build up relationships with people, so people want to come on the podcast. That doesn't necessarily always help us with PR, but I mean, it doesn't hurt that, we've talked to these people. We also try to build them up at the same time, not just ask. So yeah, there is a lot of building relationships / schmoozing, some people call it, but it can't be fake at the same time. We can go into a whole podcast on this. I'm probably going to start blabbering, so you got to cut me off.
Let's get back to, you said there are a few things you want people to remember.
Few things that I want people to remember. So with PR, just back to the paying too much or too little, there's no proper amount. Just don't go too low. And if something seems cheap, it probably is. And it, again, it comes to the dollar store. It's like we said before, the macaroni and cheese at the dollar store always tastes off compared to the regular macaroni and cheese, which is already disgusting. So, wow, I just compared myself.
Macaroni and cheese.
Okay, craft dinner macaroni and cheese, at least.
Yeah, that's legit. And Velveeta is legit.
Okay, no comment. We don't have Velveeta up here, so I do not know whether.
So why are you making that face? You don't even know, man.
Craft dinner was what I was making.
Don't even know.
But so there's not really a right amount for PR, but it's what we always tell people to do is look at bands that are similar in style to you, see who they've worked with, ask them how it was for them. Some people might tell you they had a horrible experience with a certain PR, but a lot of times that was just because they had improper expectations. Like, I've heard people tell me that certain PRs were just absolutely horrible. They had no good results with them. And then you'll find out they had all these major placements and they were expecting like NPR, they were expecting Pitchfork, and it's their debut. And you'll be like, what are you talking about? That was a fucking great campaign. You only paid $500 for it. You're a fucking idiot. So just kind of ask around. And if your expectations are that you're going to get the moon, like on your debut, not going to happen. So that was the main things I wanted people to remember.
Okay. I think we've covered, as I said, those are the 5 things that we think are the biggest wastes of time and money in your marketing sort of world for musicians. But please feel free to let us know if you vehemently disagree with us, or you think of anything that you think is a bigger deal, and share it in the comments where you see this. And yeah, let's have a discussion. Definitely would love to hear your guys' opinions on that.
Yes.
Right on. And until next time, everyone, make like a bull and throw those horns up.